Hi, the SI meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Friday, December 27th, just a few days away from the month of January. January looks like it will be quite a cold month in the eastern half of the nation, the central U.S., the eastern U.S. One of the reasons may be a stratospheric warming event, and what we're showing here are the last 30 days, the way upper part of the atmosphere at around 10 millibars. We're looking at temperature anomalies for the past 30 days. In all these areas where you see red and orange, this is above normal temperatures, especially centered over the U.S. that developed about a month ago and then really intensified and is still quite intense. In other words, a stratospheric warming event, as we see here, has occurred over the past 30 days in parts of the world, especially centered right over the U.S. Now, we typically like to monitor what's going on in the stratospheric in terms of temperatures this time of the year, because sometimes a stratospheric warming event in the northern latitudes, the high latitudes, will translate into colder weather moving down into the central and eastern part of the U.S. perhaps several days or even several weeks later. Stratospheric warming during the wintertime can indeed foretell a cold pattern in the continental U.S. sometime after the event occurs. And in fact, there are reasons to believe that January looks like it will be quite cold in the central and eastern U.S. Again, a stratospheric warming event has taken place over the last 30 days in parts of the world, especially centered right near the U.S. Well, what we're going to look at now is the GFS forecast map for temperatures at the North Polar region of the world at 10 millibars. Again, this is way up in the atmosphere, the stratospheric level, 10 millibars. This is the last night's temperature analysis, and this is a typical pattern seen this time of the year. The North Pole is right here. There's a little circle represents the North Pole right there with a cold polar vortex sitting right on top of the North Pole. We're seeing right here. These dark purples are about minus 80 degrees to minus 85 degrees Celsius, centered right over the North Pole in the highest part of the atmosphere, the stratospheric level of 10 millibars. Now let's now jump ahead 5 days to see what the GFS computer forecast model is doing 5 days from now. And indeed, here's the forecast map 5 days from now from the GFS model. Again, this is last night's temperature analysis 5 days from now. Notice a large area of above normal temperatures here. Kind of can look at this as a high pressure in the stratospheric part of the atmosphere around 10 millibars 5 days from now. Again, the North Pole is right over this area right here. This cold polar vortex is starting to get squeezed. Let's now jump ahead 5 more days. This will be a 10-day forecast for the GFS model. And indeed, that cold polar vortex gets squeezed even more. Stratospheric warming event, at least on one side of the pole, indicative here by the oranges and yellows. Again, this is the GFS forecast map for the temperature pattern at 10 millibars. Now this is 10 days from now. So we go from this currently to this 5 days from now, and then this 10 days from now. So again, this is signaling a possible stratospheric warming event. What typically happens with a stratospheric warming event is that it sets off a chain of events that will lead to colder temperatures in the troposphere over the North Polar region, and then that usually translates down into the lower latitudes some days or weeks later. So again, the stratospheric warming event can lead to a chain of events that will ultimately lead to Arctic air outbreaks in the central and eastern part of the U.S. Well, one other piece of evidence here for a cold January is the NOAA's coupled forecast system, or CFS, model run. This is for the month of January, which again begins in just a few days from now. What we're looking at right here is a very cold prediction by this particular climate type model in the central and eastern part of the U.S. Now this kind of correlates pretty well with that stratospheric warming event, at least what's forecasted by the GFS model for ultimately Arctic air outbreaks in the central and eastern part of the U.S. So kind of two different sources of information that are signaling the same type of cold pattern expected in the eastern half of the nation for the month of January. So again, it looks like quite cold, and the first Arctic air outbreak of significance will come right at the beginning of the month by Tuesday and Wednesday. Wednesday's New Year's Day. It looks like we'll be very cold here in the Mid-Atlantic region, and certainly it appears as if there will be many more Arctic outbreaks during the month of January, thanks in part to a stratospheric warming event. We'll continue to monitor all of this here at the SIWeather.com over the next several days and few weeks. January looks cold in the eastern half of the nation. That's it for now for the SIWeather.com. I'm the SI meteorologist, Paul Dorian.